Eureka! Welcome to Makayo Messenger. It's wonderful to be with you all. Woohoo! So I got some feedback saying, when you go woohoo, it totally blows my ears out. So I put a new clipping blocker on there, and I'm just wondering, I just tested it for you, so I'm just wondering if that helped at all. Let me know in the comments. I don't want to ruin your hearing, for how else would you hear these shows otherwise? And it's good to be with you all today. I want to give some shout outs. Thank you so much to the mods being with us as always. The faithful, incredible, beautiful, wonderful mods. Wild West in the house. Jeannie and Oriana. And awesome. And I don't know if I see anybody else here. And thank you all for the rest of you being here as well. Love you all. Thank you so much for waiting patiently for me. As always, I try to start as quickly as I can, but the Lord always has more He wants to stuff into that video. You know what I'm saying? And every day I kind of wrestle. I'm like, man, I wish I could do a 10-minute video. I know it would reach thousands of more people, but you wouldn't get all the information. So it's just kind of it's one of those things. That's why I need your help to share these videos, because we have basically been shadow of the Bened. We don't really show up on people's home pages, even if they subscribe to us, or we always get people saying, I just found you, where you been all my life, so it's just the nature of the game, guys. Most people don't know we exist. So if you could let them know, that would be a great, great help. Well, you demanded it, and we had to oblige. I mean, we couldn't hold back any longer, people. I mean, I couldn't contain myself with the thought of you being sockless out there. Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's time to rock your socks. So people have been demanding it, begging for it. Even my own wife says we gotta do it. So here you go, people. It's time to rock your socks, baby. That's right. Introducing the Makayo Messenger. Rock your socks! Available now on eBay. That's right. You can go to the link in the description of this video if you'd like to rock your socks off in the name of Makayo Messenger. And, it's just fun. We're just having some fun here. And so since we're talking about socks, I figured, hey, why not throw some socks up for you? And it's not really much of a fundraiser for us. We only make a couple bucks. I mean, most of it all goes to the person who prints it on demand and the shipping and eBay. But it's the thought that counts. And I want you to have some socks on those feet that you can rock off. You know what I'm talking about? It's time to rock your socks. So if you'd like to grab a pair, you can go over to the link in the description and get yourself some very own Makayo Messenger. Rock your socks off, baby. You can do it today. So, if for nothing more than for a good laugh, you know what I'm saying? And you can represent Makayo Messenger wherever you walk. And people will say, what's that on your socks? And then it would be a good conversation starter. You can share your faith and tell them all about what the Lord is doing in your life. Woohoo! In the name of God, yes! Hey, I'm looking at my clipper, and it's not going into the red zone. So that's a good sign, huh? Good sign? A good sign on the earphones out there? I know I had some people in the earphones. You're like, you're blowing my ears out. I love your shows, but you're blowing my ears out, man. So I'm like, well, I can't hold back the Holy Spirit. So let me see what I can do. So hopefully that's helped out on the sound end of things. Guys, I got a lot of fun stuff to share with you tonight, and I hope you're excited, as excited as I am, as always. In Ecclesiastes... good old Ecclesiastes. I was just sharing about this recently. I think on Makayo Ministries, I was just sharing the book of Ecclesiastes, if I'm not mistaken. So go on over there to Makayo Ministries and check out the first video that's up there right now. I think it's called Life to the Full. And I believe I was talking about Ecclesiastes on there. But Ecclesiastes 1, it says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. So, sometimes people say, well, wasn't that prophecy already fulfilled? Well, God has a way of doubling and quadrupling and quintuplexing. I don't know if that's a word, but he has a way of doing it again and again and again. You know, the first Passover was when Moses got the Israelites out of Egypt. But the one that we're most excited about is when Jesus was crucified on Passover. You see, that was a dual fulfillment of the same prophecy, of the same moed that God had on his plan. So don't be surprised if God fulfills a prophecy more than once. He tends to roll that way. It's like he's driving a point home, if you know what I'm saying. So in Luke 21, we see that Jesus is talking about the time of the end. And he says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then recognize that her desolation is near. Now, what's interesting about that is, and by the way, I should check my sound out there. You know, I guess I have been asking about the sound. But just making sure that the sound is okay, too, in addition to not blowing your ears out. I hope that everything sounds okay, nothing too wonky going on sound-wise. If you just want to let me know with a little earlobe there and a thumb, that would be awesome. But Jesus said, when you see... All right, thanks. Appreciate that. See that. Thank you. Woohoo! When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies and recognize that her desolation is near, then those who are in Judea must flee... Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. To the mountains, and those who are in the midst of the city must leave, and those who are in the country must not enter the city, because these are days of vengeance, so that all things which are written will be fulfilled. Woe to those who are pregnant, and woe to those who are nursing babies in those days. Boy, isn't that the truth right now over there in Israel? For there will be great distress upon the land and wrath to this people, and they will fall by the edge of the sword, and will be led captive into all the nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So, interestingly, we kind of have a dual fulfillment with this scripture. Now, we know right after this, Jesus talks about the signs being in the sun and moon. Now, this return of Christ right here, that wasn't in the original scripture. It just went from this paragraph right to this paragraph, right? And there weren't all these numbers and everything else. So sometimes we divide them in our mind like this must be a separate time. It doesn't have to be a separate time. It can be the same time. We've talked about that a lot in the gathering video. I encourage you to check out that video. But it says, there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and the earth dismay, and perplexity, roaring of the sea, of the waves, men fainting from fear and expectations of which are coming upon the world, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. We're waiting for that one. Shaken, not stirred, as Mr. Bond would say. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these things begin to take place, straighten up and lift up, straighten up and fly right, straighten up and lift up your heads, because your redemption, baby, is drawing near. Woohoo! Yeah, redemption! I'd like some of that, wouldn't you? So, okay. So we have this thing about the armies surrounding Jerusalem. Now, this is a big one to look for, because up to this point, we've been focusing more on Matthew 24 and some of the other ones that don't talk about these armies surrounding, right? They just kind of talk about the sun going dark and the moon going dark and other things. But the armies part, that's kind of exclusive. It's like a Luke exclusive, you know, in regard to this whole timing. But now that we see armies surrounding, it's like, woohoo! We're kind of getting excited, right? Kind of getting excited. Like, wow, Luke's on board. Okay, here we go. But what's interesting is some could say, well, this was already fulfilled back in 70 AD when the army surrounded and they destroyed the second temple, which is true. And they obviously fled from the city and so forth. And you could even say perhaps that they were taken captive to other nations at that point. But what I want to point out is this about to happen again? You know what I'm saying? Because it ties in right before the return of Jesus Christ, right? And Jesus is, of course, talking about the end. So, and we know this ties in with Ezekiel 38, which we're going to touch on today, and Psalm 83 as well. We're going to kind of talk about the characters that we're looking at there, the usual suspects, as the movie Usual Suspects deals with. But what's interesting about this is a few things, okay? So what's key here is Jerusalem surrounded by armies, okay? So I don't know that we're quite there yet, though we're getting pretty close. Pretty close, I think you'd have to say. But Jerusalem is very specific. So Israel's one thing. That's the whole nation. But Jerusalem is that special, precious city where the Temple Mount rests. And as we know, they called this the Al-Aqsa flood, right? So as far as the Palestinians are concerned and Hamas, they are focused on Jerusalem. I mean, that is their destination that they have in mind. So they're not just trying to get through Gaza, they're trying to get into Jerusalem. So most definitely it is pointing in that direction. Now, what's interesting is that Jesus says, then those who are in Judea must flee into the mountains. I wonder why they must flee. It's going to get pretty bad. So what we're getting a picture of here, now it talks about desolation. Desolation, the word here is amaurosis. Amaryllis? No. Amaurosis, I think. Let me take a look here. Desolation, eremosis, eremosis, not a hairy Moses, okay? Don't get the wrong idea. Eremosis, okay? Eremosis. It means a making desolate or desolation. Okay, so what does eremosis really mean? Well, when we look in this translation here, in the etymology of the word etymosis in ancient Greek, it literally means depopulation. Depopulation. Ooh. Well, we know that the great serpent that is trying to take over the world is keen on depopulation. And we're going to talk a little deeper about that today, too, and why he's even focused on that. But that's pretty interesting, that's what the word eremosis really means, depopulation. So it's not simply a thing of devastation or, I'm going to obliterate the land, but specifically we're going to depopulate the land. We're going to get those people out of my hair. We were just sharing some memes on that recently. Guys, if you haven't come to our fellowship, you are missing out. That's where the fun really happens. Here at YouTube, it's just kind of like just a stop along the way. But if you haven't come over to the fellowship, which you can find in the first link in this description right here, man, you're missing out. I'm going to be there in the after video chat today, by the way. Be sure to join me for a few minutes after this video. Just come by and say hi. It's a time for you to come and share. I share for a couple hours, then it's your turn if you want to come and share. But you don't have to say much. If you just want to listen, you can type in the corner as well if you like. And you can just say, hey, nice to be here. But guys, you're missing out. The fellowship is where it's at, and it's on fire lately. People are posting and sharing and Bible studying and praying and doing all kinds of things over there. You want to come and be a part of it, and you can do stuff over there too. It's an open ministry in the sense that we welcome people to come and have their own ministry there, whatever God is calling you to focus on. So getting back to this, though, desolation really is talking about depopulation, okay? Well, that's significant, right? Because we obviously know the snake wants to do that. That's a good name. Call him the snake. The snake, that ancient serpent, the devil, he wants to do that. He wants to depopulate. He wants to get rid of all the humans. So, and then they will be depopulated. It says those in Judea must flee to the mountains. So there seems to be something driving an escape here, driving a sense of, man, we got to get out of Dodge. Like the armies are surrounding, and we're not going to win this battle. Is basically what's going on. Now, God is going to step in, as we see in Ezekiel 38. But it sounds as though it's still going to be pretty treacherous, as it says, woe to those who are pregnant and nursing mothers. As we know, babies have already been victims of this onslaught. So it sounds as though God is saying, you need to get out of Dodge. Yes, I'm going to save the city, but you don't want to be in it because they are going to be taking over that city. So what may happen, as we see in Ezekiel 38, there's an earthquake, and that seems to put a stop to that. But there is a battle that takes place still. There's still a WAR, and we still got fire raining down on both sides, Gog, Magog, and the coastlands, those in safety in the coastlands, which could be U.S. of A. So there is a WAR that takes place, and the weapons, and then after that, they live off of that for 7 years. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but But I just want you to take this in, this whole Luke thing, okay, that's going on here. So they got to flee to the mountains. Those are in the midst of the city, must leave. So there's like a must going on here. Now, I didn't look at this. Does it have the word must? Because that sounds pretty firm. Let's take a look here. It says fuego. Let's see, to the mountains, those who are in the midst. Now, this isn't the NASB, which is known to be the most accurate. But, we always explore them all. Must leave. Okay, so it seems to be adding a must there. But I'll take a look in another translation just to depart from, okay? So this is all about depopulating Jerusalem, guys. About the Jews getting out. Wow, it's pretty deep. So that's actually what it means to depart, to leave. And we'll do an NKJV on this and see what it says. Survey says, who are in Judea, flee to the mountains of those in the midst of her, depart. So, okay. So what do you want to add the must in there? Must, it kind of makes it a little stronger, but that may or may not be in the actual translation. One is Textus Receptus, and the other is the Novum Testamentum Gratiae. Known as the MGNT. So, okay. Well, interesting. So, in any case, you got to get out of Dodge. Okay, that's basically saying, go. You must go. Okay, you cannot stay. You must leave. You will do the leaving now. Because these are the days of vengeance, so that all things which are written will be fulfilled. Woe to those who are pregnant. Okay, we just read that, all right. For there will be great distress upon the land and wrath to this people. Now, they will fall by the edge of the sword. Wow. So this is, and it's talking, I know this is another passage that talks about, ravishing the women and, plundering and just kind of taking over, devastating the whole place. So Jesus is saying, you got to get out. I mean, don't think I'm going to, you're not going to be protected. Don't think you can hide out in Jerusalem. You need to head to the mountains and get out of Judea. Now, I had some people locally who kind of took that to heart. They went and got out to the mountains. But now we can see this literally is talking about Judea and Jerusalem, right? And it's interesting. They will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led captive into all the nations. Is this the plan of the snake? To take all the Jews out of Israel. First, it was to put them all into Israel in 1948. Now it's to get them all out of Israel, right? So they can have that land back. So it's not just going to be a thing of let's say, the Hamas, which is the name violence, which is in the Bible, as you see in the other video that we did. And the Palestinians, they're not known for being great neighbors. They're like, oh, stick around. We love you. No. It's like you're either going to die or you're going to fly. They're not going to, if they're going to take over, they're not going to like peacefully let you live there, right? Unlike the Christian ethos, let's just say, of, hey, love your neighbor, right? No, they're not thinking love your neighbor. They're thinking KILL your neighbor and destroy your neighbor. So they're going to have to flee. So they're either going to flee on their own or they're going to be taken captive to all the nations. Whoa, that's pretty deep. It's kind of like, diaspora all over again. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, that's the scripture that really kind of puts it into this time because, you can say, well, this was fulfilled already and the Gentile Romans came in and they trampled on it. Well, that's true. They did do that. But they didn't do it until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled because the time of Gentiles hasn't been fulfilled yet, right? As we see in Romans 11, that's what Paul's talking about there, that that the Jews are blinded in part until the full number of Gentiles comes in, right? So the time of the Gentiles hasn't ended yet, but now it's about to end. So now is a logical time for this to really come to fruition. And we also see that echoed in Revelation 11 with the two witnesses when it says then there was given me a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship on it. Leave out the court which is outside the temple and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations, or the Gentiles, actually, and they will tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months. So isn't that interesting? It uses the same terminology of the Gentiles, which all nations that are not JEWs are considered Gentiles, see, being given to the Gentiles. So it's almost a virtual quote of what Jesus said in Luke 21, It's going to be given to the Gentiles, and they're going to trample it underfoot. I mean, isn't that interesting that they even emphasize the fact they're going to tread it? They will tread it underfoot. I mean, that's kind of, it makes you think, man, are they really going to kind of, damage the place? I mean, it sounds like it, right? It sounds like they're just going to kind of like disrespect it, tear it apart, and march up one side and down the other, So, wow. Okay, so that's what we're looking to be fulfilled, and that's going to happen when, it seems during the time of the witnesses. Now, it could be argued that it's one then the other. Witnesses get 1260 days, and then the Antichrist gets 42 months. Though I feel, and especially when you see what's happening now, it makes sense that this would be right now. This would be the next 3.5 years, right? That the witnesses are going to come, and they're going to tread on it underfoot. And so the witnesses really are going to be outnumbered, because if everybody else has either had to flee or has been taken captive to all the other nations, they're really going to be alone in the middle of all these heathen Gentiles that just want to kill them, right? So that's going to be something to be. No wonder they got to breathe fire to take these guys out. I mean, it's going to be like, it's going to be a nonstop. The 1260 days of prophesying in between having to do Jackie Chan Kung Fu with all these guys coming at them. I could only imagine what that's going to be like with these two witnesses. So that's what's going to happen, right? The two Gentiles. So, okay. Now, what's interesting is Jesus also, one more thing there, Jesus talks about a sword, right? He says they'll fall by the edge of the sword. By the edge of the sword. And there's kind of like a deeper meaning there. Now, Jesus said, "Do not suppose that I've come to bring peace to the earth." Peace on earth, how can it be? We think of Jesus as, he's the Prince of Peace. Well, yes, he is, and he will ultimately bring peace, but that's not what he's coming in the short term. In the initial, it's not to bring peace, and he said so himself. So I think sometimes we need to remember that. He didn't come to bring peace right now, okay? He can bring peace inside of you through the Holy Spirit, but on the earth, no. He says, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So, he's saying, listen, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. And as we see, as he said in Luke 21, the sword is coming. People are falling by the edge of the sword. So don't be surprised at these things that we're seeing in the Middle East. This is what was meant to happen. And when he talks about your own household, that includes the JEWs and the Palestinians, okay? Because these are brothers, guys. Isaac and Ishmael, okay? Isaac and Ishmael were brothers, half brothers, but nevertheless, they were brothers. And the Ishmaelites are the Arabs today. They're the ones fighting against Israel, and Israel are the son of Isaac. So they really are fighting against their own household, ironically, right? Because they have the same forefather in Abraham, right? Now, here is just a map that shows the areas of Hamas, areas of violence. And if you notice, it looks a lot like a knife, right? It looks like the shape of a knife. And as you see here, in fact, the Palestinians have made a poster with the shape of Israel as the knife, and it says, "Your knife is freedom." So there you go. So it's not been lost on them. They understand that that's exactly what it is. It's a knife. And so God even made the shape of Israel into a knife, because he even said, you will be divided always against your brothers. And if you don't take out these nations now, they will forever be a thorn in your side. And that's exactly what we've seen, right? Because they didn't take out all the ites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites. These are people that sacrificed their children, people that, worship Moloch and all these things. So, you didn't take them out. And so now you're still dealing with them. You're still dealing with that thorn in your side, that knife. And so it's interesting. I looked up the word knife in scriptures, and it only appears around 6 times in the whole, depending on what version you look at. in the whole Bible. Now, what's interesting is the first two times it has to do with Abraham and Isaac. And it has to do with the knife that he was going to use to sacrifice his son. And that God held back that sacrifice and was testing him to see if he would even, as Jesus just said, a man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his son more than me is not worthy of me, right? So Jesus does not have a different message than the Old Testament God. A lot of times we say, oh, it's a different God now, Jesus is so loving, and God was so, man, he made Abraham want to sacrifice his son. No, it's the same message. It's the same message. I just read it to you. In Genesis, he tells Abraham, you got to go take your son up the mountain and kill him, and then Jesus said, hey, if you love your son more than me, you're not worthy of me. I've come to bring a sword to your family. Basically the same message. Now, in both cases, he didn't literally mean to kill his son. And so he saved Abraham from killing his son and gave him another sacrifice instead. But he just wanted to test his heart to say, do you really love me more than these? Like Peter is asked by Jesus. And Jesus is the same way. He's like, listen, I'm not really looking for you to, unlike the Ishmaelites who do believe in violence and do believe in killing their own family in the name of God. God is the opposite. He came to show us grace and mercy and the opposite of that, violence. But he uses the same symbology, right? And so what's interesting is Genesis is the first time that knife is used, and specifically regarding killing Isaac. And of course, he does not kill Isaac, just to make that clear in case you're not familiar with that story. What's also interesting is there's another account of a knife with Moses, where God is, apparently going to kill Moses or his son. It's debated whether this is his son or Moses, but it says at a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Sounds kind of odd. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. But I think it was the idea of like touching him to kind of give him the blessing, right? I think the point was that they hadn't circumcised the son, that he was like an uncircumcised Philistine. So the Lord let him alone. At that time she had said bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision. So kind of an intriguing encounter again with a knife, and specifically regarding Moses and the potential death of Moses or his son. Wow. And then there's a couple other references to knives here. So kind of intriguing that Israel is shaped like a knife. Okay. I appreciate Elon shared this with me right before I came live here. And it's in Jeremiah. Check out Jeremiah 47, 48, and 49. I'm not going to read all of it to you, but it really talks about the destruction that's going to come upon the nations that are currently and will be coming against Israel in these battles in these days to come. So check out these chapters, but I want to read a little bit of this 47 here. It says, "This is the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the Philistines before Pharaoh attacked Gaza." Before Pharaoh attacked Gaza. So once again, it starts at Gaza, and they talk about Gaza in here. It says, "This is what the Lord says, see how the waters are rising in the north." What are they calling it? The Al-Aqsa flood. And it's coming in from Hezbollah in the north as well. "They will become an overflowing torrent. They will overflow the land and everything in it, the towns and those who live in them. The people will cry out. All who dwell in the land will wail at the sound of the hoofs of galloping steeds, at the noise of enemy chariots, and at the rumble of their wheels. Fathers will not turn to help their children. Their hands will hang limp, for the day has come to destroy all the Philistines." Okay. In case you didn't know, the Phila of the Steens are the same as the Pala of the Stinians. "To cut off all survivors who could help Tyre and Sidon." Okay, Tyre we're going to talk about today a little bit. "The Lord is about to destroy the Philistines, the remnant from the coasts of Kaftor. Gaza will shave her head in mourning." Okay, Gaza will shave her head in mourning. Okay, not talking about in the morning, but M-O-U-R. In other words, in wailing, in mourning for the dead. "Ashkelon will be silenced." That's just north, and that's also been hit a lot here over these last few days. O remnant on the plain, how long will you cut yourselves? Wow. That's interesting. It kind of goes back to Elijah when he was with the false prophets of Baal who would cut themselves, calling on their false god. And we know they're all about the sword and all about the knife. Ah, sword of God, sword of the Lord, you cry. How long till you rest? Return to your scabbard, cease and be still. But how can it rest when the Lord has commanded it, when he has ordered it to attack Ashkelon and the coast? Wow. So there it is. So the sword of the Lord attacking Ashkelon and the coast. I'm not gonna read the next ones. I'm just gonna kind of show you a couple things in them though, because it's pretty amazing, pretty harrowing how the connection. So we got the connection with Moab here. So I just want to show you a few things because it's going to apply to what we're about to look at here. So Moab talks about the destruction of Moab. It talks about I think this is mostly about Moab here. Okay, more Moab's horn. Okay, so go back and check that out if you want to hear more about what happens to Moab. Wow, there's a lot happening in Moab here. Okay, but as things progress, we may just explore the scriptures more. I just kind of want to bring them to your attention right now because I got a lot of other stuff to share with you. Woo-hoo! Great stuff! Great stuff! Knock the socks! Knock the socks! Whoa! Hey! I'd say the fact that it's shaped like a sword and all those sword connections, that's kind of sock-worthy, don't you think? You can throw a sock for that one. Woohoo! All those, it's some interesting connections there. Okay, Ammon, we're going to talk about Ammon as well. And also Edom, talk about Edom also. And Damascus is in here as well in one of these. Where's Damascus here? Oh, here it is. Concerning Damascus, right? And that's another one on the list here. Damascus must cease to become a city. That's a prophecy that is yet to be fulfilled. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but it seems to tie in with Jacob's trouble, according to Isaiah 17. Damascus has become feeble. She's turned to flee, and panic has gripped her. Anguish and pain have seized her, pain like that of a woman in labor. There it is again. Whoa, whoa, birth pains, woohoo! Flip a sock, rock your socks, rock your socks. So, wow, I mean, every time, guys, it never fails. We're talking about it's almost like a marker that God gives us as an end times marker. Woman in labor, woman in labor. Remember, it's going to be like birth pains. When Jesus is kind of like winking at you. It's going to be like birth pains. So go study your Bible, find out every time it talks about a woman in labor, every time it talks about birth pains, and you'll have a connection there, right? So Damascus is going to become feeble and flee. So just like Jerusalem is going to flee and be taken to all the nations, Damascus is going to flee. Because you know what is going to happen to her. The city will be no more. Why has the city of renown not been abandoned, the town in which I delight? Surely her young men will fall in the streets. All her soldiers will be silenced in that day, declares the Lord Almighty. I will set fire to the walls of Damascus. It will consume the fortresses of Ben-Hadad. So thank you, Elon, for sharing that with me. And great scripture connection. Okay, so Psalm 83, we've gone over this many times. Look at some of the other videos for other aspects. I'm going to talk about something completely new today. I don't like to repeat myself, if you've noticed. So I encourage you to watch those other videos. If you've only got through 15 minutes, which is kind of the average, on YouTube, people can only handle that much. Then come back another day and watch another 15 and watch another 15 because there's a lot of information in there that you're missing out on. But here in Psalm 83, it says, with cunning, they conspire against your people. They plot against those you cherish. See how your enemies astir, how your foes rear their heads. O God, be not quiet, be not still. Come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. Well, it's still remembered, right? So that hasn't happened yet. But the fact is, it's never going to happen. But that's what they're plotting right now. With one mind, they plot together. They form alliance against you. The tents, okay, the tents. This is a key word, the tents. Because Hamas is known for living in tents. So even though, these are actual nations, really it's representations because the tents are kind of nomadic, and they have their sort of cells, their sleeper cells that are in all these locations, living in their tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites. So it's not necessarily in the location of Edom, but rather tents of Edom in the location of Israel. It's possible. And the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia, which is Palestine, with the people of Tyre. And even Assyria has joined them to lend strength to the descendants of Lot. Okay, so I want to just talk about some of these areas a little bit, some of these places, and then we're going to look at Ezekiel and do some calendar stuff as well. So don't you worry, you calendar lovers out there. I got something for you. Okay, so anyway, so here's the kingdom map of those kingdoms that we just talked about: Edom, Moab, Ammon, Damascus, Philistines. Okay, Philistines. So Philistines basically where Gaza is today, Ashkelon, Ashdod. You know, a lot of people never knew where these places were, but they all know now, right? So it's important to learn the history here. So this is where those places came out of, and you notice the names don't change that much. Philistine, Palestine. You know, it's all pretty similar, pretty familiar there. Syria, Assyria, you know, etc. So okay, so that's sort of a general map of where these people. So as you can see, Israel really is surrounded by these people, right? And these nations. Okay, so and here's another map for you where you can kind of see. Now here's where the 12 tribes get involved, okay? So this is where the people started kind of mixed together, because you have initially, before Israel came in, you had all these tribes just kind of living here. And then Israel comes in, and you had the initial sort of, basically what I mean, you got a few things going on here. You've got them entering the promised land, right? You know, from Moses, right, and taking the promised land and taking out all these nations, but they didn't succeed in taking them all out as they were supposed to do, that God commanded, and so they became sort of a thorn in their side. And then you have the time of David, and you know, and all that came about was Saul being the first king of Israel, and then David, and so. But when they first came, you know, you had the different tribes, right? It was all the tribes took their land, and it still stayed that way. But then it kind of divided into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. That's kind of what you see here. So it's a little bit, you know, out of timing, I guess. But just want to kind of give you this idea. So you've got these competing tribes. You know, you have all these ites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, and all these, you know, and the Philistines and so forth. And then you've got, you know, the tribes of Israel coming in to the same territory. And so I want to look a little bit at some of these places that are mentioned in Psalm 83, and then we're going to do the same thing for Ezekiel 38. So we can kind of get the people. The goal of this study is to kind of get an understanding of who are these, you know, these entities coming against Israel, and kind of get a deeper understanding of that as we go forward. So, okay, so here's once again the 12 tribes. You can see that as well. Here's another one. So I'm just kind of giving you some different maps to kind of, you know, get an idea of where some of these places are. Okay, and here you can see the Hagrites. Okay, so the first one mentioned in Psalm 83, it's going back there for a second. The first one are the Edomites, right? The Edomites and the Ishmaelites. Now, Ishmaelites are just all the children of Ishmael, which are all the Arabs, you know, the Arab nations. Moab and the Hagrites. It sounds like a band. It's Moab and the Hagrites. Okay, so you see Moab over here in the purple, right? And you see Edom down there in the yellow, right? And then we get into the Hagrites. Let's see, this one. Okay, so you see the Hagrites are over there. So we're kind of looking at where Jordan is today. You think, Jordan is not necessarily that aggressive toward Israel. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit. So Hagrites, okay, you see the Hagrites there? That's kind of where the Hagrites are. I think they have another map with the Hagrites. There shows the Hagrites. So they're kind of on the eastern side of the Jordan River, okay? And that's sort of the Jordan, land of Jordan, and then getting up into Syria as well. And so Jordan, okay, has an interesting relationship here, and maybe we should show that to you on a map real quick, just so you could kind of get an idea of that. So let me just show that to you here on the actual current map, So you can see that, okay? Just want to you can get a picture of that in your head. So as you see there, you got Israel, the knife coming down. Then you got Jordan kind of flanking out there. And then you got Syria kind of coming in right around where the Sea of Galilee is. Kind of right around the Sea of Galilee area, you have that area. And really, the Sea of Galilee also kind of is a demarcation point of the contested area of the Golan Heights as well. So it's kind of a good marker there to kind of know your geography there. So, okay. And then a little bit south of there, kind of southwest, is where Armageddon is going to take place. So we've got Jordan here. We've got Israel, Damascus. I mean, isn't it cool that God told us what was going to happen in advance, and that we could say, okay, well, this is where this is going to happen, and this is, we know all the people that are going to be involved. It's all been prophesied. It's all there, right, in Scripture. And if only they knew it, right? And sometimes you think maybe they do, and they just ignore it, or they think of it differently, like somehow they're going to win. But in any case, that's the dealio there. Okay, so Jordan is pretty much flanking that side, and then with a little bit of Syria coming in currently today. But let's deal with what the scriptures are talking about here. So, okay, so going back over here, so we got the Hagrites, okay, so Jordan. So what's up with Jordan? Jordan is unwilling to take the Palestinian refugees. It's going to give you some recent news on Jordan. This is all recent stuff. Jordan warns the U.S. Israel could forcibly displace Palestinians to neighboring nations. So Jordan is kind of a neutral, somewhat neutral. Now think about this. Think why they might be more neutral. Well, if you go back to the original 12 tribes, 3 of the 12 tribes are basically in Jordan. So you can understand why Jordan is somewhat a mixed group, because they've got a lot of Palestinians, but you've also got remnant of the 3 tribes, Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben, are all in the territory that's currently Jordan, right? Manasseh may be peeking a little bit into Assyria, but barely, So that's kind of an intriguing thought there, that's part of the reason, and their neighbors, you don't want to be upset with your neighbors because that makes for bad relationships. But, other neighbors have no problem being upset with them, but the immediate neighbors can be a little challenging to live that way. But in any case, so they may secretly have their issues, but maybe not being open about it. But what's also interesting is that the 12 tribes are involved as well. So, okay, so they're unwilling to take refugees, and they're kind of complaining. But now secretly here, well, not really secretly, because this is on the United of the Shon website here, in the question of Palestine. This happened on the 12th of October. So this happened 7 days. Is that 7 days or 6 days after? When did was it on the 7th that they invaded? I think 7th, right? So 5 days. 5 days after the Al-Aqsa flood began, Jordan donates $4.3 million in support of Palestine refugees in operations in the Gaza Strip. Now, that can just seem humanitarian. Anybody could donate for refugees because they're people, right? It's just not an issue of, well, they're Palestinian, we're not going to care about them. But, are they donating any money to help those in Israel who are being harmed? Just for comparison's sake. So it's just kind of interesting to see where do their sympathies really lie. And Jordan says Palestinian displacement pushes region to abyss of wider conflict. So they're kind of hinting, hint, we may have to get involved here in a wider conflict. Here it says, Israel-Palestine war. Tensions simmer in Jordan as Hamas urges tribes to join conflict. So like I said, it's the tents, right, as it says in Psalm 83. So it's not necessarily a whole region. It's more like tribes, different pockets, different groups. That's kind of how the Palestinians are laid out. They're kind of got these different pockets. If you look at a map, it looks like an ink blot or something. It looks like finger paint. I mean, it's not these nice little neat subdivisions, but it's all very like abstract art, where all the different tribes are living, right? So Hamas is basically saying, like, come on, Jordan, you're going to have to get involved here. It's like the pressure's going to start to be on, or you're going to have to take a side. You can't just stay neutral anymore. The tents of Edom and Ishmaelites and Moab and Hagrites. You see? So the tribes of the Edomites and Ishmaelites and Moabites and Hagrites that are in Jordan are going to have to get involved. See how that works? Yeah, you can't stay neutral, unfortunately. I mean, we know we live in a very polarized world where it's like you must take a side and you better be on the right side of history, as like people like to say, which is usually the wrong side when they're saying it. But that's what they're saying, like, or we're coming for you next, kind of thing. It's like, you better get involved, buddy. Why has Jordan canceled Mr. B's visit after the bombing of the Gaza hospital, right? So, they're kind of dividing ties. I mean, they're walking this line, right? And it's what Israel has had to walk for a long time. They got to walk the line. They got to walk this line between who are they loyal to, right? So these pockets, these tribes, these tents of the Hagrites and Moabites and Edomites may soon be getting involved. Thousands gather across Jordan in solidarity with the Palestinians. Okay, so we're starting to see that brew, right? We're starting to see that brew. Now it says, Jordan-Palestine relations are strong, historical, but sometimes unstable. Bilateral relations between the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the state of Palestine. So, strong relations there, but sometimes unstable. But they may not want them to be unstable. They might have to get a little stronger involved with them so that they don't get too unstable. Now, Beersheba came up because the Ammonites, I believe, were kind of in that area. Now, they kind of buffered between, or maybe it's the Edomites that I'm thinking about. Let me go back over here one. Yeah, Edomites. So the Edomites, they kind of buffered between sort of that southern Israel area. Now, Beersheba is just north of there in the kingdom of Judah. But I want to share some about Beersheba here. So, but you see the kingdom of Edom's there, and it's kind of buffering between Jordan and like lower Israel. So that whole lower Israel and then you got Gaza over there with the Palestinians. So that whole sort of section is a little loosey-goosey, it seems, in terms of where they stand. So here in Beersheba, I thought was interesting because there's been some bombing happening there lately. And it says in 1947, the United Nations partition plan, Beersheba was designated to be part of the Arab state and part of their partition plan for Palestine. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. So that southern area, where the Edomites, right? The Edomites were hanging out. Yeah, that's kind of an area to be watching there. Okay, the next one here is Gabal or Byblos. Now, I have a list of this here. Let me open this up for you so you can kind of see. Okay, so here's what I'm going through right now. So here's the armies currently surrounding Jerusalem, right, that are moving in. So you got Edom and Jordan, the Ishmaelites, the Arabs, the Moabites in Jordan, the Hagrites in Jordan. Gabal is Byblos or Lebanon, okay? So Byblos is kind of an interesting town. It claims to be the oldest city in the world. It claims to be the oldest city in the world. Byblos, also known as Gabal in the Bible. So that's kind of intriguing in and of itself. And so it'll be interesting to see. Now, Byblos is up here in this northern area. You can kind of see where that is. See where that on that map. So it's up there in in Lebanon. Okay, it's in Lebanon. Byblos or Gabal and Tyre are both mentioned in Psalm 83, and they are both in Lebanon there. Is there another Lebanon country that's mentioned there? Let's see. I think those are the two that are mentioned for Lebanon. Okay, so that's kind of something to consider here. Now, there was in 2006 there was a Lebanon WAR that took place between Israel and Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is they are headquartered in Lebanon. Okay, so they're also on the coast, north on the coast. So you got Gaza on the south of the coast, and you got Lebanon on the north. So they are definitely fully involved in being against Israel. But Byblos supposedly is known for somewhat of a Christian group. So what's interesting is some of these, maybe that's why God's pointing out these areas, because maybe some of these areas are sort of unexpected. Like even these guys are turning against you. Maybe it's that kind of thing, like, watch out. You think they're your friends, but you might get stabbed in the back because they're going to have to join the rest of the club, so to speak. So Biblos is up here. So that's something to consider there. And Hezbollah is the other arm. So you got Hamas, which is violence, and then you've got Hezbollah, which is known as the party of their false god, Allah. And a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and militant group. And so that is what they're all about, and they're based out of Lebanon. So you got it coming from the north in Lebanon, and you got it from the south in Gaza. And that would kind of encompass the Tyre and the Byblos connection there. And this kind of goes into deeper what you need to know about Hezbollah, the group backing Hamas against Israel. So they're kind of working hand in hand there. And Lebanon's Hezbollah calls for a day of rage over the Gaza hospital strike. So they're definitely on fire over there against Israel. So definitely they are fulfilling that scripture. And I think those towns are going to have to get involved, Syrians in Lebanon fear Israel-Hamas escalation. So then we get to Syria. Now, Assyria, when it had an A in front of it, used to encompass quite a large area. It eventually kind of got trimmed down to that darker green area there, which is roughly where they are today, a little bit less than that. But and their name hasn't changed much. They go by Syria now, but not much has changed. Now, what's interesting in Psalm 83, it says even Syria has has joined them to lend strength to the descendants of Lot. Descendants of Lot. Because the descendants of Lot, Lot's kids are named Moab. I think Lot's kids are Moab and Ammon, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's those two. It's like two of those nations are Lot's kids, at least. But and that's kind of what Assyria's been doing, right? Assyria hasn't been outright an enemy of Israel, but they've been lending support and allowing Hezbollah to operate there and helping them out. So they're getting involved, as we know, and says Syria and the Hamas attack, another potential Iran-backed front, right? So they have their fingers in the pie as well. It's kind of all brewing for everybody to kind of, like the mob mentality, right? When everybody kind of gets like, yeah, let's get them, like we're kind of getting to that point where everybody's just going to kind of get on board and to seek to wipe them out, because they're like, well, if we all go together, we can take them out. I'm sure that's what they're saying. It's like, hey, we can do this, guys. We can take them out together. So during this WAR so far, 2 rockets were launched from Syria toward Israeli territory. So they're already getting involved in their own way. Okay, Gog and Magog. Let's talk a little bit about Ezekiel here. And I've done some videos on this. Encourage you to check it out. Just go on my page and or my channel here and type in Gog or Magog, and you will get that. And also some interesting connections with Russia, with love. Russia in Revelation, Putin's name being in the Bible. And is Russia in the Bible? Also, there's one, just look up the word Russia, you'll find out there's a video there about the history of the Russians and where they came from and so forth. It's very interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these guys. Okay, these guys, Gog and Magog. Okay, let's talk about Gog and Magog. Let me first read you Ezekiel 38 here. Now, what I want to propose to you is something a little bit different with Gog and Magog today. Because I know there's been lots of proposals out there. Some say it's Russia, and some say it's Turkey, and some say it's a great debate, but I think it may be even bigger than that. It could be Satan, as the church lady would say. Could it be Satan? I want to propose something a little bit different to you today, and look at this from a spiritual standpoint, because I think we may find this interesting. Now here, even in this picture, you see the Scythians. The Scythians are the historically for the Russians. I encourage you to watch that Russians video. I go over the Scythians in great detail. But okay, well, let's talk about this. Gog and Magog. Who is Gog and who is Gog and Magog? Gog is a person who rules over the land of Magog, Russia. Magog means the prince of Rosh. Gog, Rosh is the old root word. Okay, so that's one thought. Gog is described as the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. So I don't even have to open these up, and you can just see kind of just some gist. So Magog was a real person, so on and so forth. So who is this Gog? And is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a group of people? What are we talking about here? And I put it in here, is Gog Satan? Now, this says, one view within Christianity is more starkly apocalyptic, making Gog and Magog here indicating nations rather than individuals, allies of Satan against God at the end of the millennium, as described in the book of Revelation. Okay, so I want you to kind of let that simmer a little bit. Gog and Magog were allied with the armies of Satan. The armies, which kind of armies are we talking about? Because in Ephesians 6, it says, put on the full armor of God so you can take your stand against the devil's schemes, because our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the evil powers and authorities in the heavenly realms. So we really are fighting a spiritual battle, and that's what this always has been and will always come back to. And people try to ignore it and say, oh, what are you thinking about Israel for and the Temple Mount and all that stuff? It's because you have to, because it is a spiritual battle. You're never going to get around it. That's what this is. So, and, people are going to have to come to terms with that fact as things get more and more freaky in the spiritual sense, as the abyss gets opened up and there's all kinds of creatures roaming around and stuff. It's going to be like, no, I still don't believe it. La, 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 la. Plug their ears, close their eyes. Gog and Magog used to be Satan, the devil himself, is another theory. So in other words, Gog and Magog is a name for the devil himself, is another theory. So I want to share these theories with you, and then I want to get into the scriptures here and kind of look at this a little bit. Gog and Magog are symbols of the forces of Satan opposed to God and his people. So it is kind of an interesting term, Gog and Magog. It kind of has a ring to it, a little bit odd. Like, well, what is this term, Gog and Magog? Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog. What does that mean? It sounds odd. It sounds kind of maybe a little creepy and weird, like something from the caverns of hell, Gog and Magog. It sounds kind of like something a witch stirring a brew in a cave would say, you must visit Gog, you must see the oracle of Gog and Magog, something like this. So it is a little strange, right? And it does make you kind of wonder. And when you look at this, and as we see it today, I think your eyes are gonna be open, maybe open a little bit. I think it's gonna be sock worthy. Okay, let me just say, get your Micaiah Messenger socks ready if you haven't already. Get your socks on and get ready to fly. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about this Gog and Magog. Okay, well, Gog appears in the Bible mysteriously only in 3 books. Okay. Now, I suppose that's maybe more than some other things, but, for being so significant in the end times, it really is talked about very little. And it's mentioned once in the book of Chronicles. It's the name of the son of Joel, like as in the prophet Joel. The sons of Joel were Shemaiah his son, Gog his son, Shimei his son. And then we have Ezekiel 38 and 39, those 2 chapters of Ezekiel. And then Revelation 20, and that's it. That's the only insight we get into this Gog terminology. So it is a bit mysterious, okay? It's a bit mysterious. Now, if we look here in 1 Chronicles 5, I think I might have it open here already. It talks about the sons of Joel. The sons of Joel. And it says Gog his son. Okay, so the name is Gog. What is your name, son? Gog. So Gog means mountain. Okay, now this is where this is where the socks are. You're gonna want to roll those socks up a little bit, okay? Okay, you want to pull those socks on, warm your little toesies, okay? Because it's about to get sockalicious around here, okay? I'm telling you, this is blowing my mind in so many ways today. I just can't even tell you. So check this out. So Gog means mountain, right? Okay. Still kind of mysterious. Like, okay, mountain. All right. It says, a prophetic prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, and Magog. Again, basically telling you what any of us could look at it in the Bible, but that doesn't really tell us much, right? Because it's like, okay, I guess so. But check this out. Okay, so when we look at this Gog in Chronicle or in Ezekiel, okay, let's look in Ezekiel. So we look in the Chronicles. It was a name of a son of Joel. Okay, so then we get to Ezekiel. It's the only next time we ever see this term Gog come up, other than Revelation, which we'll also talk about. But Ezekiel says, "And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, and prophesy against him." Now, I know there's debate about this word Rosh meaning head or chief, which it does. You know, Rosh Hashanah means head in Israel in Hebrew, but all names have a meaning. So just because a name has a meaning doesn't mean it ceases to be a name. So we can't rule that out just because it also means, because otherwise it's kind of like saying, the chief of the chief, because the prince of the, the head of the head, the prince of the head, so it doesn't really make sense that way. It makes more sense actually as a name. But I digress a bit. So Gog and the land of Magog, okay, that's what we're focusing on right now. And say, "Thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Gog, prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal." Sounds like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. "I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out." So it's very personal what he's saying here. It's like he's talking to a specific entity, right? "And all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them splendidly attired, a great company with buckler and shield, all of them wielding swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Put with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer with all its troops, Beth Togarmah from the remote parts of the north with all its troops, many peoples with you." Now, it could be a city or a nation, right, that could have all the troops and everything. But when we get into Ezekiel 39, there's this personal side to it, I think, that goes a little bit beyond it simply being a nation. It could be a nation, or it could be the head of a nation, which would be an individual, I suppose, again. But be prepared and prepare yourself, you and all your companies that are assembled about you, and be a guard for them. For many days you will be summoned. After many days you will be summoned. In the latter years you will come into land. Okay, the latter years. Well, we're in the latter years right now, it would seem, pretty strongly. "In the latter years you will come into the land that is restored from the sword." Restored from the sword. So remember, wow, that's so cool. Oh, man. God, you really are awesome. Okay, so Luke 21. See, okay, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, this is how God just rocks your socks. Socks! Rock the socks! Rock the socks! You don't even know why you're rocking them, but just do it anyway. Throw a sock across the room. What's it gonna do? What's it gonna hurt, huh? Just take that sock and throw it, man. Just throw it against the wall. You know what I'm saying? It's a sock. It's a sock. That's the beautiful thing about a sock. You can throw a sock as hard as you want. And what's it really gonna do? What's it really gonna do? Now don't put rocks in your socks. That's different. I say rock your socks. Don't put rocks in your socks. That's where it could really get damaging. Okay. So you'll come into the land that is restored from the sword. Woohoo! Man, I haven't even read it yet, but boy, I'm just feeling excited about that one. If you remember Luke 21, oh man, Jesus said, oh, and I'll tell you, let me tell you what he said. I'll tell you what he said. I'm going to tell you what he said. "They will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led into captive. All nations. Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles." So we kind of have this initial sword that took place, right? With the captivity of Jerusalem and the destruction of the second temple, there was an initial edge of the sword, and they've always had the sword. The knife and the sword and so forth. But here we're seeing this image of Israel being restored from the sword. You're coming to land that's restored from the sword. Woohoo! Restored from the sword. Whoa, rock the socks. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool because it's almost like, okay, yeah, that was the first time. Now it's time for part two. So unless we're going to have a big restoration that happens now after this sword that's happening right now of Psalm 83, the way it seems to be rolling here, if it's going like a flood, as it says, the end will come like a flood, go watch Like a Flood video on this channel. And if it's going to be like birth pains, and the water's breaking and the baby's coming out, man, it's going to be whoosh, the end will come very rapidly. right? They build and build and build and build. Blah, blah, blah. So if this is the kickoff, which it sure seems like it is, and it says war will continue to the end, there may not be much of a breath between these different things. I mean, they all may be part essentially of the same battle or the same WAR. Different battles, but the same WAR. So you've got Psalm 83, which then can lead to Damascus being destroyed, which then can lead to the Prince of Rosh getting involved, so to speak. Okay? So restored from the sword, wow, whose inhabitants have been gathered from many nations to the mountains. So see, they already were taken once to those nations by the edge of the sword, and now they're restored from the sword, and they're brought back to the nations, only for it to happen again to the mountains of Israel, which have been a continued waste, but its people were brought out from the nations, and they're living securely, all of them. Now, you could also tie this into Revelation 20, and you could say, well, this kind of ties into the end, and argue that this is an end-time prophecy, like end meaning after the millennium, after the millennial reign. And you could make that argument, although there are some other parts of it that seem to point to a pre-millennial experience. Now, again, prophecy, what has been done before will be done again. So prophecy could happen more than once here. Now, this could be a pre and a post millennial reign experience that we're looking at here. So it says, you will go up, you will come like a storm, you will be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your troops, many people's with you. Cloud covering the land always makes me think of the current drones. Thus says the Lord God, it will come about on that day that thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil plan. And you will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages, right? And that's what they are right now. Which I get the sense when Jesus comes, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be unwalled villages when Jesus is here or not. I will go against those who are at rest. They will live securely, all of them living without walls and having no bars or gates. Interesting. I mean, they technically have gates in the old city, but not in the whole of Jerusalem. To capture, spoil, and to seize plunder, to turn your hand against the waste places which are now inhabited, and against the people who are gathered from the nations, who have acquired cattle and goods, who live at the center of the world. See, it's the center of the world, guys. Go and watch. Wow. Go and watch. I did a video on this sometime back called The Tree in the Middle of the Garden. Go look for that video. Very interesting about Israel being the center of the world. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all its villages will say to you, have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled a company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away goods, and to capture great spoil? Therefore prophesy, son of man, and say to Gog, again, kind of a specific entity it seems he wants to talk to. Thus says the Lord God, on that day when my people Israel are living securely, will you know it? Will you not know it? You will come from your place out of the remote parts of the north. Remote parts of the north. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. Okay, check this out. Okay. Remote parts of the north is the word Eureka! Eureka! Eureka. That's the word. It actually means side or coast or parts or borders or quarters, flanks, side, extreme parts, the sides, the very extremities, the very outer reaches of the north. Okay, again, pointing much more to Russia than it would be, say, pointing to Turkey. Again, Turkey doesn't need hooks in its mouth to get involved in this battle, but we're going to go over that in a second. But right now we're talking about this idea that could Satan be Gog? Could this be a reference to not necessarily Satan himself, but a Satan, in other words, and I'm going to show you something that reflects this. You know, sometimes God he uses the term of the king of this area, the king of that area. And he's not really talking about that actual man king. He's really talking about the devil, who is the king of the world. You're like, the devil's the king of the world? I thought Jesus was the king of the world. It's like, well, actually, no, not yet. Not yet. It's been given to the devil for a time, and even Jesus acknowledged that when the devil said, all the kingdoms of the world have been given to me. Bow down to me, and I will give them to you. So, and Jesus didn't argue at that point, right? So the devil does have dominion over the world, but it ultimately belongs to God, and God's allowing that to happen, right? He's allowing it for his purposes so that people will turn to him. But this idea that this entity he's really talking to Satan through this entity, be it an individual, be it a country, and so forth. So taking this thing, Eureka, okay? Eureka! that's why I opened the video saying Eureka, because this is very interesting. This Eureka, as we're going to see. So this means the extremities of the northern parts. Okay, now think about this. Okay, think about this. This has a spiritual implication. This is not just talking about land, but talking about the devil in the upper heavenly realms, the extremities of the northern parts before you get into God's heaven. He's in these extremities, these heavenly realms, the Eureka section, the Eureka, the extremities of that part. And you're going to see this a little bit more in a second. It says, you will come against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the land. It shall come about in the last days that I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me, and when I am sanctified through you before their eyes, O Gog. Thus says the Lord God, are you the one of whom I spoke in former days through my servants, the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in those days for many years that I would bring you against them? Interesting. So he's asking him, are you he? It will come about on that day when Gog comes against the land of Israel, declares the Lord God. See, Satan wants to be God. Gog is one letter away from God. And I'm not saying that cinches, that seals it in any way, but I just find that kind of interesting. If we think of this Gog term as a term for the devil, again, I'm not saying that it's a spiritual battle. I'm not saying he's not using physical people, but I want you to take that in, because I'm going to share something else here that's going to, I think, help corroborate that concept. Comes against the land of Israel, declares the Lord God, that my fury will mount up in my anger. In my zeal and in my blazing wrath, I declare that on that day, there will surely be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. Now, we're expecting this great earthquake. I've done videos on this before a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. I did a video called The Big One, all about the big earthquake that's expected in Israel, and how they estimate 7,000 people will die in that earthquake. And that's exactly the number listed in Revelation 11. Now, we know the Israelites are not Christians generally, so they're not going to promote something that's going to, that would fulfill Christian scripture, and yet it does. So their own seismologists have figured out that about 7,000 people will die, and that's exactly what it says in Revelation 11. There's a great earthquake after the two witnesses ascend, and 7,000 people die. The fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the field, the creeping things that creep on the earth, and all the men who are on the face of the earth will shake at my presence. Now, again, this sounds a lot like Revelation 6, where the sky rolls back, there's an earthquake, we know the sun goes dark, the moon, and the stars fall fall like late figs. And it doesn't say a third there. I don't think that's in Revelation 12. But and then they say, hide us, right? And Jesus says, everyone will see him and mourn, right? They will mourn and look upon the one they have pierced, as it says in Zechariah as well. And it says, they say, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? So it says, everyone on the face of the earth will shake at his presence. Okay, so they're not just shaking at the earthquake, but they're actually shaking at God's presence. The mountains also will be thrown down, the steep pathways will collapse, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will call for the sword against him, again, or Gog. But again, it's not the word Gog there. I'm going to just say, I don't know if it says him. I'm just kind of curious there, because that would specify it a little bit more. But I don't think it says him. But let me see. Maybe if it does, then that would change the game. Let's see. Against him. It's just this word. But maybe the conjugation of it. Let's see. Upon. Okay. Yeah, because, it's kind of intriguing. This word here, not to get off too far on a tangent. And I was having trouble with the translator. It wasn't translating too well. So that's your homework. You tell me what that says when you translate. Okay. So I will call for sword against him on all my mountains, declares the Lord God. Every man's sword will be against his brother. Okay, well, this fulfills, is it the second seal, right? Every man's sword being against his brother. With pestilence and with blood, I will enter into judgment with him. Okay, well, we know that there's a fire and blood and hail and fire and blood, right? Mixed with blood. Comes from heaven in Revelation when the plagues begin. And I will rain on him and his troops and on the many peoples that are with him, the torrential rain with hailstones, fire, and brimstone. I do another video on Gog and Magog that talks about the two earthquakes. And it might be here. Yeah, this one, the 2 earthquakes. So check that out where I talk about the 2 earthquakes and the connection here with all the hail and the fire and brimstone and so forth. Okay, so I will magnify myself, sanctify myself, and make myself known in the sight of many nations, and they will know that I am the Lord. So again, if he's making himself known, that may very well be Revelation 6. It matches in so many perfect ways here, and seems to make a lot of sense for that to be the case. Now, in Ezekiel 39, when it talks about it, it says, "And you, son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say this, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I'm against you, O Gog, prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal." Now, these are separate, arguably, nations of their time, or at least cities of their time. And so they had their leaders of their own leaders. So when we're talking about a leader who's over all these cities, again, it points more to Satan. It takes more to the devil, someone who he's overseeing many nations, right? As he is right now, right? All of our nations have been taken over by these devils who are really being controlled by Gog, so to speak. "And I will turn you around, drive you on, take you up from the remotest parts of the north, and bring you against the mountains of Israel. I will strike your bow from your left hand, dash down your arrows from your right hand." Now, again, this sounds very personal, like he has a left hand, he has a right hand, like this is an individual, like a person. "You will fall in the mountains of Israel, you and all your troops, and all the peoples who are with you. I will give you as food of every kind of predatory bird, beast of field." Now, it sounds very much like Revelation 19. "You will fall in the open field, for it is I who have spoken. And I will send fire upon Magog and those who inhabit the coastlands in safety, for they will know I am the Lord." Now, this could be a spiritual defeat, right? That you will fall, meaning all those armies representing you fall. It may not be a physical. It will be physical. I don't want to confuse you, but in other words, he's talking through all of that. Like it's, there's a spiritual battle going on here, guys. It's beyond the physical, beyond the flesh and blood. So yes, there will be flesh and blood who fall in the mountains and get buried. But really, it's like he's taking away his power. In other words, you will no longer have dominion, Gog. You will no longer. So if Gog is a name for the devil, the fallen devil, he's basically saying you will no longer have that power, and you'll be defeated on those mountains, and then all you and all your men will be buried. Obviously Satan himself is not buried at that time. Satan's a spiritual entity. He's going to be thrown into the lake of fire at the end of this time, but the defeat, is significant. So what is some evidence that may support this concept of looking at this from a spiritual perspective? And also, when we see it again in Revelation 20, it also makes sense. Not that there isn't a physical battle going on, but that this Gog may be bigger and deeper than just, say, Putin or Erdogan or somebody like that, right? Or MBS or whoever you want to think it is. That's something deeper than that. And what's interesting is in Ezekiel, not 38 and 39, but in Ezekiel, did I show you this already? What's this? No, looked at that. What's this? Revelation. Okay, so in Ezekiel 28, we see something similar where God is talking to what is pretty clear to be Satan. He's talking to Lucifer. He's talking to the devil, the fallen, the ancient serpent, the devil. But he calls him the king of Tyre. Now remember, Tyre is one of the nations who is going to be with Gog and Magog and all this. I'm sorry, not Gog and Magog, but Psalm 83. But it's one of the nations coming against us in Lebanon. Okay, they're in Lebanon. "So the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take up a lament concerning the king of Tyre, and say to him." So it sounds like you're talking to this one dude who, this human dude who's leading Tyre. But really, Satan is the king of Tyre. You see? Satan is the king of Lebanon. Satan is the king of Gaza, right? And you can say Satan, you could argue Satan's the king of Israel and the king of USA today. I'm not saying that they are. Okay? Now people can get upset. But the reality is the devil's taken over the world, and he always has been ruling the world, but there have been maybe some noble people along the way who've tried to do the right thing and do good things. I'm not saying all leaders are satanic, but we sure know a good portion of them are, right? And it's obvious today. You don't have to. You can throw a stick and hit a satanic leader these days. They're all around you, taking over all the nations of the earth. So the real king is not some dude. It's not Mr. B. It's not Mr. O. It's not Mr. T. It's not, it's not Chucky. It's not any of these guys. It's the devil. He's the real king of Tyre, you see. He's the real king of Magog. And so it says, here's the lament concerning the king of Tyre, and say to him, this is what the sovereign Lord says, you were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Okay, well, there's no human that fits that, right? You were in Eden. Okay, well, I don't think the king of Tyre quite made it to Eden, right? The garden of God. Are we still talking about the same guy? There's only three entities I know that were in Eden other than God. Adam, Eve, and then that snake, that serpent. Every precious stone adorned you, ruby, topaz, and emerald, chrysolite, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and beryl. Well, I guess if you're a snake slithering in the stones, it makes sense. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub. Now, I just talked about this recently, but this is what we're looking at today with this Eureka thing. Don't lose that Eureka thing, because we're swinging back to that one, about this northern upper limits. You see, the devil, he's not content with his station as the guardian cherub. He wants to be in the utmost place. He wants to be on the throne. He wants to be at the northern limits, you see, in a spiritual sense. So he was the guardian cherub, but that wasn't enough for him. For so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. See, the holy mount of God. That's where he wants to be, and he wants to be God. He wants to be Gog, in charge of it all. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God. Okay? This mount is really important, because really, Satan's whole game is king of the mountain. You play that as a kid, king of the mountain. You go out on the playground, and it's king of the mountain, and everybody goes up to the top of the highest point, and then you just push each other down. It's a real, sophisticated game. And, you just push the guy down, you just push the other guy down, and the other guy tries to take you down. It's just kind of an excuse for boys, usually, to wrestle and beat each other up. But it's king of the mountain. And so that's basically what Satan has been playing. He wants to be king of the mountain. So we start to see this Eureka thing in a whole new way, as we're going to see as we go forward here. And I expelled you, O guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings. By your many sins and dishonest trade, you have desecrated your sanctuaries. So I made a fire come out from you, and it consumes you. And I reduced you to ashes on the ground, in the sight of all who were watching. All the nations who knew you were appalled at you. You have come to a horrible end and will be no more. You could just see like the human king of Tyre going, is he talking to me? I don't remember any of this. It's like, he's obviously not talking about some dude running Tyre, okay? He's talking to the devil right here. It couldn't be more clear, right? And in Isaiah, it's very similar. Isaiah 14, and I think I might have that open here too. But very similar in Isaiah 14, right? He says, how you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you were cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. So this is all about the devil trying to get into heaven. He wants to get back into heaven. So this is why he waters down Scripture. This is why he hates, as we're going to see right here, the Christians. This is why he hates you so much. This is why he wants to make war against the saints. Because, as he says, you said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Well, who are the stars of God? I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. Well, who's the congregation? On the farthest sides of the north, or also known as, get your socks ready, people, the farthest sides of the north, Eureka, baby, Eureka, woohoo, Eureka, rock the socks, rock those socks, woohoo, rock those socks, rock those socks, rock those socks, Eureka. So Eureka, guys. Eureka is where we all want to go. Eureka! To the farthest sides of the north. See, of the north. He's trying to get to the north. So what's interesting is God kind of does a play on that with Gog and Magog, because you're going to come, he says, you're going to come from the Eureka of the north, and you're going to come down and be buried. You're going to be buried. Buried in the earth. You're going to be destroyed. You're going to, how the mighty have fallen, right? As we saw, I think that was in Ezekiel, or is that this one? One of them says, how the mighty have fallen, about Satan falling. I didn't read the whole thing here. But Eureka, guys, Eureka. So he's coming from the farthest extremities of the north. I will send above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High, but you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Those who will gaze at you and consider, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms? Why did he shake kingdoms? Because he was leading the kingdoms. Who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of its prisoners. All the kings of the nations, all of them sleep in glory, etc. And he goes on that you will not be joined with them in burial, like a garment, evildoers, and be ashamed. So, how the mighty have fallen. I know it's here. It's in one of these. If it's not this one, it's the other one. But the point is, he wants to be above the stars of God. Well, who are the stars of God? Well, Philippians 2 says, therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, I need to move this over a little bit so you can see that. As you have always obeyed, much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation. Not only in my presence, much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good will. Am I reading the right part here? Oh, yeah. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure children of God, without fault, in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life, in order that I may boast in the day of Christ, that I do not labor for nothing. Ooh, being poured out like a drink offering. Let's talk about that lately, too. There it is. So, stars in the universe, guys. That's how we are meant to shine. When Jesus said you're the light of the world, it's deeper than just, I'm going to try to be shiny and happy people holding hands. No, you're the stars of the universe. Do you understand? You are the light of the world. Like literally, you're what illuminate the world. Like you are going to be like stars in the universe. Some people believe the stars are angels. And, Jesus says when we die, we're going to be like the angels. And so we are the light of the world. And so Satan, rock your socks. Satan is saying, I want to exalt myself above the stars of God. Why do you think they call them stars and celebrities, right? The people that are famous. It's because they're trying to be like God. They're trying to be like God's children. But you know what? You, as God's children, you are the star of God. Rock the socks, baby! Yeah! You are the light of the world. And so Satan is trying to get his throne above you, and that's why he hates you so much. That's why he wants to kill you, destroy you, eliminate you from the planet. He wants to get rid of all humankind because you are the stars of the universe. You are what lights the world. He wants to sit on the mount of the congregation. See, he wants to be, it's all about the mountains, king of the mountain. Where's the mount of the congregation? Well, that's you. You're part of the congregation. It's also worded in, now that's NKJV. In NASB, they worded as the mount of the assembly. That's us. We're the ones assembling to be with God. So he wants to be there. He's jealous. He's jealous of you. That's why Satan hates you so much. He's jealous because you're going to get to go there and he's not. You are the stars of God, and he wants to raise his throne above those stars. He wants to sit on the mount of assembly. It's all about the mountain, guys. It's all about being king of the mountain. So Magog comes in. He's trying to take that mountain of Israel, Gog and Magog, Gog of the land of Magog. He's trying to take that mountain from the Lord, the mountain of the Lord. As we know, in Isaiah 2, it says, the word of Isaiah, son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days. There it is again, latter days. You can look for these clues, guys. It's like, I don't look up these scriptures. It's like these are kind of. I'm looking for I looked up the scripture because of the mountain reference. The latter days is a bonus. It's just telling you. It's like, yep, wink, wink, it's another one. That's another one. That the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on top of the mountains. Also, it's often translated as chief among the mountains. That's how it is in the NIV, as chief among the mountains. So it's the mountain of mountains, or top of the mountain, top of the mountain, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. See, Satan is trying to get that mountain. That's all he cares about. So this Gog and Magog thing, it's a war for the mountain. Why does he want Jerusalem so much? Because that's the holy mountain. That's where God put his name forever. That's the mountain. So that's the power. That's where he needs to put his flag, right? Anywhere else, and he hasn't succeeded. He's got to get that mountaintop. So this is the mountain of God, right? The mountain of the Lord's house, as chief among the mountains, or top of the mountains. And so that's what he's trying to get to. But here, let me see. So this word mountain, let me go down here, is Har, okay? So Har is the same word as Har Megiddo or Har Mageddon. So once again, it's a mountain. It's a king of the mountain battle. Har Mageddon is a king of the mountain battle. That's what we see here. They gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Har Mageddon, or mountain of Megiddo. Mountain of Mageddon. What does it say here? Go over this. Armageddon, yeah. But Har Megiddo is really what it is. Let's see. Or Armageddon. It's sometimes translated as Armageddon or Har Megiddo. But it's the mountain of Mageddon or Megiddo. Very kind of similar to Magog, actually. Mageddon, Magog. There might be a connection there. Just thinking about that now off the top. But it's like, the mountain of Mageddon. That's where he wants to do the final battle. Very interesting. And we all know Mount Zion, right, is often referenced throughout scriptures as the place where we will reside with God. And it's beautiful in its loftiness, the joy of the whole earth, like the utmost heights of Zaphon is Mount Zion, the city of the great king. So he knows it's the mountain that he needs to attain, and that is what he's trying to come after. So Gog means mountain, Magog means land of the mountains, and he is trying to become king of the mountain. That's his goal. King of the mountain. I could have called this video King of the Mountain, but mountain. So here's all the different mountains. Mount Zion. A lot of Mount Zions in the Bible. So something to check out in your free time. Okay, so let's talk briefly about these cities, and then I want to get into some calendar stuff with you here. Okay, so Rosh and Magog. Okay. I've done a lot of videos on this, but there's a lot of reasons to believe that Rosh connects with Russia. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see the connection between those two words, and there's a logic there. Magog also, again, there's debate over this, but there's a lot of older maps that seem to point to Magog and Rosh being, again, we're talking the outer extremities, the Eureka of the northern heights. The Eureka. So the northern, the extremities would be Russia, because you're getting up into Siberia there and so forth, and then you get up to the waters that are up there. But again, Rosh, Magog, so forth. Many maps, which all roughly kind of point to the same thing and same rough estimates of where these places are. But I'm going to show you some more evidence for this right now, just briefly show you that. Briefly, Makayo. Nothing with you is briefly. Well, I'm trying. But here's an older map. You can see Magog is up there above the Caucasus Mountains, which is where Russia is, and so forth. Okay. So what's interesting here, so if you look up, what is this? This is Gog and Magog. So if you just look up Gog and Magog in Wikipedia, what's interesting is one of the oldest paintings is actually a Russian painting. The devil, Gog, now this has the devil, Gog, and Magog attacking the holy city. This is from a 17th century Russian manuscript. This etching or painting here. I'll just show you that real quick. So that's a Russian painting. Okay. So kind of intriguing in and of itself. And then let's just look briefly here in this account. All right, let's hold on a second here. It says, according to these teachings, the conflict between Russia and the U.S. which makes sense. We're in that now, the conflict between Russia and the U.S., because this conflict's really between Russia and the U.S. I mean, yes, you've got the Middle Eastern conflict, but I'm talking about what started in Ukraine and so forth. I mean, that's really between us. Ukraine is just, a proxy. It's a war by proxy. So they're just a middleman in all of this. But modern apocalypticism, some Hasidic, from the early 19th century, some Hasidic rabbis identified the French invasion of Russia under Napoleon as the War of Gog and Magog. During the Cold War, the idea of Soviet Russia had a role of Gog. Even some Russians took up the idea, apparently unconcerned with the implications, as they do now. They keep quoting, that they're the horsemen of the apocalypse and so forth. Medvedev and all those guys over there. Also, Prince of Meshech, Rosh Meshech, sounds suspiciously like Russia and Moscow, which we'll look at here in a second. So possibly a connection with Russia there, Prince of Rosh. But again, Gog may be beyond Russia. In other words, Gog may be pointing to the devil, who is the Prince of Rosh, you see? Just like he's the Prince of Darkness, he's the prince of these entities that are coming against the holy city. And that's the significance of it, in which Gog and Magog are identified as, and so forth. So, they can always kind of do the usual suspects on there, but it's kind of intriguing. So Rosh means head, riverhead, beginning. That's interesting because we know we just had the beginning in the calendar there with the eclipse. It was the beginning, and it may be the beginning, the eclipse that we just had. So that's something to consider. Riverhead, chief prince, and so forth. And then there's other thoughts here. Rosh is a reference to Russia, Meshech and Moscow, and so forth. And you can look at more of that. Hebrew Rosh and Greek Rus, very similar because Rus Ros is the word for Russia in different languages. Okay, so let me show you a couple more things here. What's this? Oh, okay, this is, if you look up Rosh, and you'll see I do a video called "The Prince of Rosh is Putan prophesied in the Bible," and I do something on his name being in the Bible. So you might want to check that out. Those are kind of interesting videos talking about connections with him specifically. And then this is referencing Rosh as well. Let's see, what does this say? So Rosh is the seventh of the 10 sons of Benjamin, named in Genesis. So again, another name from the Bible. So not just head, but it was a name. So I think that's significant, when these names are being used, it's almost symbolic, that God's taking these names of people from the Bible and using them. A nation named Rosh is also possibly mentioned, etc. The translation Rosh, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So let me open up this again and kind of show you this layout here. So, so these are the nations that are named here in Ezekiel. Okay, so we've got, now again, I will turn you around and put hooks in your mouth. Again, is he talking about the devil? Is it because the devil is currently focused on, the Ukraine or some other part of the world? Is that who he's talking about, putting the hooks in his mouth? Kind of an interesting thought there in terms of what that could mean. So here, the concept of Gog perhaps maybe is a spiritual reference to Satan, because we know it comes up in Revelation 20, as we'll look at in a second. Magog, perhaps the land of Satan. Prince of Rosh, could be Russia, could be Putan, Meshech, and Moscow. Now let's look at this Moscow for a second here. Meshech. Now another name for Meshech is Mosok, and if you notice, it does not take much. You can easily rearrange a C and an O there, and you get Moscow. So it's not a big stretch to go to Moscow. From Meshech maybe sounds a little bit like it is, but when you see it's actually Mosok, and that the C and the O could easily be rearranged to be Moscow. A lot of these names, it's kind of like, even today when we see something, place like, we used to call it Peking. It's really Beijing, or Istanbul, Constantinople, but there's a lot of those cities that have other names that we've kind of messed up because we've been saying them wrong, basically. And they were never really meant to be said that way, but it just sort of caught on. It's like Rapture. Rapture's not really the word, but it just sort of caught on. Tubal is the next city that's named there in Ezekiel. So I'm going down this. Whoops, not that one. going down the list here, okay? So Tubal. Now, Tubal is pretty squarely in Turkey, okay? And it says it here. It says Tubal in Ezekiel's time as an area that is now in Turkey, according to Flavius Josephus. Josephus was a historian back roughly in the time of Jesus, just kind of after Jesus' crucifixion. He came on the scene, and so he put Tubal in Turkey. Now, here is a name of an area called Tabal, which, you don't have to stretch that one at all. It's pretty much the same word. It says not to be confused with Tabal, but in reality, it should be confused with Tabal because it's right there in smack in Turkey. Yes, Assyria, but Assyria was part of a bigger area back then. But modern day Turkey would be this area of Tabal here as well. So I don't know if it says anything about that in here or not. Let's see, Turkey. Yeah, hieroglyph. Yeah, it says the kings of Tabal have left a number of inscriptions on the 9th, 8th centuries BC in hieroglyphic Luane in the Turkish villages of Kalaverdi and Al-Asar. So today it's part of Turkey, right? It's part of Turkey. So yes, same deal, okay? Same deal. So Turkey is definitely going to be part of it. We know that already. I mean, that's not a surprise. They're chomping at the bit to come after Israel and to bring back the caliphate and the Ottoman Empire and so forth. Don't think it's going to happen that way. That's my take. But I know some people do think it is going to happen that way. But in any case, they'll be involved. Persia is the next one on the list. And that, of course, we know as I ran so far away. That I wonder part of the reason that song became popular was because of Iran. Like I think maybe people had a double meaning to that song. Like it's so far away, and I'm running so far away from it. Maybe there's some connection there. But that's Persia, of course, as mentioned there in Ezekiel 38, and then we've got let's see, Iran helps plot attack on Israel over several weeks. So obviously they're against Israel. I don't really have to go into depth on that. We all know that, no secret. The kingdom of Cush, okay, now this actually once included Egypt. So when we hear about Egypt turning against Israel, it's not just Ethiopia. Now Ethiopia has their ways of getting involved too, and modern day Ethiopia. In fact, it was called Ethiopia by the Romans, I believe. Let's see if I look that up real here. Ethiopia. Bum, 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 bum. So following the severing the ties with Egypt, the Cushite imperial capital was located in Meroe, during which time it was known by the Greeks as Ethiopia, and hence the name Ethiopia comes about. But Cush can be considered all the way up into that area. Cush is one of the four sons of Ham, who went and settled in Africa. So Put in Canaan and so forth. So okay. And Put is another one who's going to join the club here. Put is modern day Libya. In the Bible, it's ancient Libya. Okay, so that's going to be the Putsters there. And they're going to get involved. And I'm just kind of giving an overview of these places so that you know where they are and who's involved. And Gomer is let me go back over here for a second. Gomer is southern Russia. Okay, southern Russia is Gomer. So that's kind of interesting too. So that's kind of like getting down into the Caucasus areas and so forth. Let's see, Russia with love. Gomer with the Sumerians and not Sumerians but Cimmerians, and who dwelt in what is now southern Russia, beyond the Caucasus. So you got the Gomerites getting involved, and which could include people like the who are those guys over there? They got involved in the last. Those guys that he brought in initially, and then they kind of went away with their tail between their legs. But they're like the tough guys. I forget the name, but Putin brought them in to fight, and you guys can put it in the comments. But like a radical group that's down in that area around the Caucasus Mountains. And then we've got Togarmah. Now Togarmah is kind of interesting because Togarmah, if you look here on this map, it's kind of to the right, kind of just south of the Caucasus Mountains, below Gog and Magog, where it says there. Togarmah is kind of just south there. It's in sort of Armenian territory, which is kind of interesting. So, yes, it could be modern-day Turkey as well. And, they have Gomer over here, although it seems Gomer was really... See, Gomer's higher up there. You see it above the Black Sea? That's probably more accurate Gomer rather than the one that's down low here. So, people are guessing, so they kind of put it in every spot. Well, maybe it's here, maybe it's here. But Togarmah... That's more in the Tubal area where that Gomer is down there in Turkey. But Togarmah's, yes, it could technically be Turkey, but there is a town called Tegarama, which is basically the same name, Togarmah, Tegarama, and it's actually in our current day Armenia, which is intriguing because it's just over the border of Turkey. Let me just go over there and show you that. You have the Tegar, short for Tegarama or Togarmah, monastery that's there. So it's just over the border in between Azerbaijan and Turkey, and then Georgia's right above that there. So as you see here, this is the Tegarama area. And so that's kind of intriguing. That's in Armenia. It's as you see, Armenia used to be a much bigger area as well, but Togarmah or Tegarama is right there a little bit further over than this picture is it, but maps are always a little bit off from each other. Armenia-Israel relations are kind of interesting, and they've kind of been on friendly terms, but they may be feeling some pressure as well because they're a small little country and they've already had trouble with Azerbaijan, and Turkey's right next door, and if they're going to get involved, they may not have a choice, and there may be something that changes there. The Armenians and Jews have been often made compared, both academic and non-academic, since at least so there's a lot of connection between the Armenians and Jews. They look similar. They think they may be of the same people, may even connect to Noah's time as well, because that's roughly where, kind of getting over there towards where the Ark landed there in Turkey in the Ararat Mountains. So kind of intriguing there, but there's a lot of similarities between these two groups. What did I just see? They're both surrounded by Muslim and mainly hostile countries. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that may play a role, if it does play a role. This is an interesting title. It says Armenia has had few Jews and a poor relationship with Israel. That could be changing. Now, that was a year ago. Then again, it could be worsening, right? So if it's already a poor relationship, they may end up siding with the people next door. The evil empire strikes back: Ukraine, Kosovo, Armenia, and Israel. Thought that was an interesting title, the evil empire. So, okay. Something to ponder there. Now, it also says all the nations, or many other nations. So you've got all these nations lining up, and then you've got many nations. Well, as you see from the picture on this video, there are many nations surrounding Israel that don't like Israel, and you saw that flag video I did on the Four Horsemen, how they all have the same colors in the flag of the Four Horsemen. So we're going to see a lot of nations ganging up, as we already are starting to see. Here is those that voted against Israel: 7 members of the Arab League: Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Yemen, as well as Afghanistan, Burma, Ethiopia. See, so we're naming a lot of the suspects here. Ethiopia is already in there, India, Iran, and Pakistan. Those abstaining were these countries. So this is, I think, maybe when Israel became a nation, I'm guessing, without digging deeper into that. So that's kind of intriguing. Here it says Israel's the most condemned. This came out in, when did this come out? In 2020. It was the most condemned nation by the UN in 2020, 3 times more than other nations. The UN adopted 17 resolutions against Israel this year. So they have a lot of nations that are ganging up against them and are not on their side. So something to be watching there. So hopefully that was a good overview for you of like what we're looking at in terms of what nations are going to be getting involved with all of this and something to be keeping our eyes upon. Now, onto the calendar. Woohoo! Rock the socks. Rock the socks. Okay. So the calendar, very interesting. Okay, so this past 14th, right, we had the solar eclipse, right? And very significant, it seems. And then the following week we have this weekend we have the parashat of Noah. So they start their flood up here on the 6th, right? We've got this what seems like a sign in the skies on the 14th. Then we've got, and a new beginning. It's called Parashat Bereshit, which is a new beginning. We know Rosh actually means beginning. And so this Parashat Noah is then happening this weekend. And then followed by that, we have the 2 Abraham weekends that are coming up. We know Israel is 75, just like Abraham was 75 in 2023. So kind of interesting timing of everything that's going on here. Now, Heshvan is the 8th month. And the 8th of the 8th month is coming up here on the 23rd, which is also kind of a reverse. Now that's now looking at 1023. We were looking at 923, but it's the 23rd of the month, whereas we were looking for the 2 witnesses to come on the 23rd of Tishri, somewhere in that ballpark, at least I was, based on them having 1260 days till Passover. But it may happen that they do it the following month because this calendar actually has Passover coming in April rather than March. So it could work out that way. Now that's one thought there. A couple other thoughts here on the calendar. There's a blood moon coming up here on the 28th of the month. So the moon will turn to blood. The sun will go dark. The moon will turn to blood. Well, that's... what is that? 14 days apart, literally like 2 weeks apart from each other, from the 14th to the 28th. We had the sun going dark, and now we have the moon turning to blood, at least according to that account. It's going to be a blood moon. I know it's a partial eclipse, so I guess that's going to cause a blood moon. And that is actually falling on the time of, is this he appears? No, this is go forth. For Abraham, when he first encounters God and God sends him forth to enter the promised land. And so that's intriguing. So we had one on the beginning. That's pretty compelling right there, don't you think? So you got the sun going dark on the 14th, which is in the beginning, right? The new beginning. We had this flood happen on the 6th. Then we have Noah in between. Is that him getting in the ark at that point? Then you've got Abraham going forth at the same time as this the second eclipse, this blood moon eclipse happening. And then the following week we have he appears. Is that what it's called? He appears? He appeared. He appeared past tense. He appeared past tense. Interesting. So is this when we go forth on the 28th? Is it on the 8th of the 8th month? Is it 8/8? Is it the 28th that we may go forth after that blood moon, now that we've had the sun darken and the moon turn to blood? Could it be when he appears or has appeared on the 4th? That kind of leads into the 5th and 6th, which has some interesting connections as well. Okay. Remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder plot of treason. So the gunpowder plot and treason. Interesting. So this was movie V for Vendetta. You've probably seen that, but it was echoing an actual event that occurred on the 5th of November of the gunpowder plot and treason, when basically Guy Fawkes went in and he went under Parliament to try to explode Parliament, and of could there be a connection here with the impending doom, an impending explosion? Could there be something lining up here? Because what's interesting, as we know, is we've got this 1335 days that goes to the 6th of November. From when they, 2020, when they announced the, when they basically, stopped everything from happening, shut everything down, all sacrifices stopped, so to speak, from Daniel 9. So you could argue there's an interesting connection there. And is there something happening in this timing as well? And then 45 days, as I said, from there goes back to September 22nd, which was the last day of the harvest time, or last day of the summer before the fall equinox. Now, technically, and I meant to show you this too, just thinking about it. The last day of summer, or first day of winter in Israel, is actually December 22nd, midday. Good time to have chicken. So December 22nd is when they say winter begins through March 20th. So as far as they're concerned, summer's still on. Game on! Rock the socks! Rock the socks! Game on! Okay, so as far as they're concerned, the wise son can still gather his harvest. Now, it's interesting to think about. I would say today, roughly, actually, is the end of the Enoch calendar of the 7th month. So we've kind of got the end of, we had the end of the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar and the Hebrew calendar for the 7th month, and now the Enoch calendar for the 7th month. And now we have this 8th month going into, or that we've started, depending on what calendar you're on. So that's something to consider also. Kind of intriguing thought there. And then if you go from this blood moon on the 14th, I'm sorry, not the blood moon, but the solar eclipse that took place on the 14th, if we're thinking like, for example, when Jonah went into Nineveh, he preached for 3 days, that in 40 days, God was going to destroy the earth. Now they could have just said, you're a quack, get out of here, crazy fish man. Sure, you were swallowed by a fish. This guy's a nut. Don't listen to him. Right? But they humbled themselves and they repented. Now, is that perhaps because they saw a sign in the skies? Maybe, they've known to look to the heavens for signs, right? God created the celestial bodies for signs. And the Jews certainly were familiar with that, of looking to the moon turning to blood and things like that. So could there have been an eclipse of some kind, something of that nature that got the Ninevites' attention, that coincided with Jonah making that proclamation? Of course, we also have the 40 days of the flood of Noah that take place, and they're calling this the Al-Aqsa flood as they try to flood into Jerusalem. Really, because when you say Al-Aqsa, that's the center of Jerusalem, that's the Temple Mount. So could it tie in? Could it have the Noah tie in? We've got the Noah typology right on the calendar, on the Jewish calendar that's being celebrated, as well as the Abraham typology there. So very, very intriguing timing there. And so if you go 40 days from the eclipse, it lands on November 23rd, which is Thanksgiving Day. Now, it's also 9/23 because November really means 9. We know September really means 7, and October's 8. And so November is 9 on the Julian calendar, which is the calendar that Christ used when he was on earth, or that was used during his time. So all these 9/23s that we've been seeing could have actually been pointing to the Julian calendar of 9/23. And it's exactly 40 days. And it also lands on Thanksgiving, which we all know is a Christian holiday. It's not necessarily, it's Christian undertones, I would say, because it was when they came over on the Mayflower to seek religious freedom, and they were thanking God for protecting them and allowing them to actually build a civilization there at Plymouth, So that's really the tradition that came out of that, of giving thanks to God. And so that's what Thanksgiving is all about. So will we be giving thanks to God on that day? Well, we will be one way or the other, but will we be in heaven thanking him personally? Something to consider there. An interesting thought. And there is a creepy movie coming out in relation to that. See, look, Thanksgiving Day, November 23rd, midday. Good time for chicken. Or turkey. Ooh, turkey. Good time for turkey. Interesting. And then there's this scary movie. I'm not recommending you go see it, but the punchline of it, it comes out Thanksgiving, or at least comes out this November, says, there will be no leftovers. There will be no leftovers. You see at the bottom of your screen there? There will be no leftovers. So is that pointing to the rapture, those left behind? And are they going to get rid of those who got left behind? You know, they're going to get rid of the leftovers. I mean, I don't know what that I'm supposed to make of that, but kind of intriguing nonetheless. Guys, it's awesome being with you, and I hope you enjoyed this expose on the Bible this evening. And if you would, hit that like button, that subscribe notification bell. Thank you so much for supporting this ministry. It allows us to do what we do here and to spend so much time doing it. I always keep thinking I'm going to try to do a 10-minute video, and it just never works out that way. But please do share these videos with other people. That's one of the greatest ways you can support us as well. Just let other people know we exist, because unfortunately a lot of people don't, and they're always surprised to find us. And of course, subscribing and notifying and all that. But come to our fellowship. If you really want to get notified, come to our fellowship, because people are like, I never get your notifications. It's like, well, come to the fellowship, because I always post it in there when I'm going to go live. So that's another good reason to be part of that. But guys, it's been great hanging out with you today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you would hit all those buttons and bells, that would be great. And I'm going to be in the after video chat. If you could do subscribe to us at Mikhail Ministries and Mikhail Music as well. And also, I'm going to be over there in the fellowship with bells on in the after video chat room. So come on by and say hi. Oh, Gina's already there. Hi, Gina. How's it going? You know what we should do is I just keep going with the video, and we just start talking on the after video chat. Maybe I should just try doing that sometime. It could be a part due to the video. But anyway, come on over and join us and get the backstage pass. The backstage pass. Maybe I call it backstage pass. Backstage pass to all of our time. You can talk with me and everybody personally. We all talk to each other, or you can just listen and you can type. You know, in the corner, or on the side, there's a place to type. So no pressure. But come on over and join us. We'd love to have you with us. And guys, in case you didn't get the memo, Jesus is coming back. Yeah, he is. I know. It's crazy. Crazy cool, that is. So I think it's about time you got right with Jesus. You know, it's just from one friend to another. You know, one beggar telling the other beggars where the bread is. I'm just saying, you want to be right with the man upstairs. You know, you don't want to be like Satan trying to say Eureka, and he goes, Eureka. Ooh. You know, you don't want God to think you reek, and then throw you into the fires of hell. So now would be a good time to die to your old life and get right with God. You know what I'm saying? And you do that by turning away and turning to God. It says it right here in the scriptures. It says you must turn to God in repentance and have faith in our Lord Jesus. It's a package deal. And of course, be born again of water and the Spirit, as Jesus preached in John 3. But that's what he asks of us, you know. Who are we to say no? Who are we to say, no, I don't got to do that. I don't have to do anything. Yeah, that sounds kind of prideful, doesn't it? I think the humble approach is probably the one we want to take, where we say, yeah, okay, God, what do you want me to do? It says it right there in the Bible. I guess that's what I'll do. Sounds good to me. So I hope you feel that way too. And if you need help in your life, turning to God and getting your life together, come on over. We have prayer time. We have Bible time. We help people get their walk on with the Lord. So come on to me. You can talk to me personally about it. I'm happy to give you pointers and input and pray with you and study the Bible with you and help you get there, whatever it's going to take, you know. But you want to be ready. You don't want to be surprised. And obviously the armies are surrounding, so don't take this time for granted. Don't, I mean, a lot of people are prepping right now, but they're not really prepping for what they really should be prepping for, you know. They're prepping by getting food and shelter and protection, all this other kind of stuff. But they're not really doing the prepping that they really should be focused on, which is the spiritual prepping, because that's the one that's going to matter in the end. We all going to die, or we all going to leave this world one way or the other. It doesn't really matter which way you go. I mean, as painless as possible, I'm sure we'd all prefer, but, you know, one way or the other, you're going to meet Jesus, right? That's what matters. And you want to be ready when Jesus comes. Amen. So, guys, I hope this was helpful for you today and that you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear you come on by and say hi in the after video chat and have some pie while you say hi. I never did get my pie, so come on over, and we'd love to talk with you a little bit more over there. Guys, I'm loving you. I'm wishing you all the best and all the blessed, and I hope to see you in heaven if I don't see you here first. Maranatha.